Eagles on Thanksgiving. It's going to be week 12. It's going to be on Fox. So the official schedule release is going to be Thursday. It's Tuesday. Stuff's going to be leaking out. Fox, actually, we don't know exactly when the dates are, but they're going to have a day in which they get an international game on TV, Germany, and then they get 2 domestic games on TV. Networks never had 3 games in one day like that. That's pretty cool. But what's remarkable about the NFL? They when you watch them release the schedule, they're so intentional. They totally get it. Is that the NFL has been skyrocketing for 10 years. And both New York City teams have been garbage. In fact, many of the league's best teams are Kansas City and Baltimore and Green Bay and Buffalo and Denver and Seattle, and not glamorous markets. The NFL monetizes almost everything very well. Very little things they underachieve at. But actually, one of them is big markets don't do well. Chicago until last year, a grease fire. Both New York teams, embarrassing. Atlanta, irrelevant. D.C. was good for an hour. They're back to being weird. Dallas, I mean, Houston for years, awful. Miami will be atrocious this year. Since 1987, the Jets and the Giants have made the playoffs at the same time twice. And the league is literally on fire. But market size matters. New York and Chicago have a combined 11.5 million TV households. Kansas City and Buffalo combined for a couple million. Like, big markets matter. And I think this is the year that the big markets return to power. I put out my herd hierarchy, my post-free agency, post-draft herd hierarchy. Both teams from LA, Chicago, Detroit, Houston, Philadelphia. And by the way, Dallas is somewhere around 11 or 12. And the New York Giants, to me, will be the most improved team in the league. Matt Hasselbeck last week, post-draft, talking about a team that didn't make my herd hierarchy, big market, Dallas.
You got teams like Kansas City, Detroit, Baltimore, Minnesota, Tampa Bay, not even in the playoffs. Like, all of a sudden, Seattle and New England, teams that didn't even make the playoffs, are now in the Super Bowl. You got teams like Chicago, Jacksonville, Carolina. So what you're doing here is really, really difficult to do, to kind of forecast that, because every year is different. And so that's why I think there are teams that aren't on your list. I would say, like, maybe the Dallas Cowboys. I know what Schottenheimer is saying in Dallas. He's saying, guys, like, we can do this. Look what Seattle just did. Look what New England just did.
It's pretty fascinating, honestly, that Colin is bringing up the topic of television ratings. The reason I find it so relevant is because I recently put together a video about the Seattle Seahawks, something tied to their opening day, or their first game, whichever term you prefer officially. What struck me was how upset Seahawks fans got, and for the strangest possible reason. All I had mentioned was that the Chicago Bears have a larger, more extensive fan base. Then Colin essentially made the same point, just framed around ratings. And the response from those fans was essentially, no, look at how loud our stadium is, look at how we outnumbered New England Patriots fans by 5-1 in the Super Bowl. And I'm thinking, that has nothing to do with the conversation. None of that is what we're discussing. What we are actually talking about involves money, media markets, ratings, and all the surrounding dynamics. And yes, teams like Philadelphia, Dallas, and other massive market franchises, the difference is like night and day. Even people who constantly claim the Dallas Cowboys are the absolute #1 in everything, well, if you actually sit down and look at the ratings, first of all, we don't have the most current 2025 numbers yet. Some data has leaked, but not the full picture. That usually comes out later in the summer. But if we look at 2024, the most watched team was actually Detroit. I believe Kansas City was second. Still, all these top teams are within roughly a million viewers of each other. So when you examine the leading franchises, Philadelphia, Dallas, Kansas City, Detroit, they're all separated by just a couple of million. Meanwhile, other teams start to fall off by 5, 10 million, and that creates a massive gap. There's a clear reason for that. And here's where it gets really amusing. Even Cowboys fans came out and said things like, the Eagles aren't that popular. And I'm thinking, what are you even talking about? There's a reason that on television, we discuss the Cowboys daily, the Eagles daily, the Bills daily, we talk about who draws the audience. After the Super Bowl in 2024, when the Eagles won, we covered them every single day. It was constant, non-stop coverage. When the Seattle Seahawks won the Super Bowl, it was almost as if the event never took place. We have spent more airtime discussing the Dallas Cowboys, Jalen Hurts, the Philadelphia Eagles, and Patrick Mahomes' ACL than we ever spent talking about the Seahawks winning a championship. That is not an opinion. That is an objective, statistical fact. For example, when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, I immediately made a post-game video. I always show a little graphic about things going vertical, and that's what all the Eagles content was about. With the Seahawks, I couldn't believe it, barely anyone watched. There's a reason I constantly appeal to smaller fan bases. I say to them, please, come on, I'm trying to break this trend. I don't want to be forced to only discuss massive market teams. I want to be able to cover every franchise out there. But when people reject the reality of the situation, it becomes difficult. The Cowboys are massively popular. The Eagles are massively popular. The Bears are massively popular. These are enormous markets with enormous fan bases spread across the country. That's why the NFL doubles and triples down on a team like the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. They are a smaller market, but because they are winning, and because Mahomes has become such a huge name, that franchise gets elevated in a unique way. You have to strike while the iron is hot, because before you know it, that window closes. Once Mahomes is gone, you take a huge hit. But if Dak Prescott leaves, or Jalen Hurts leaves, the Cowboys and the Eagles remain insanely, wildly popular. They are just inherently huge. So I'm very curious to see what this upcoming Thanksgiving game looks like. Normally, for Thanksgiving games, I prefer matchups that are entertaining but that I don't have to be completely locked in for. For me, Eagles versus Cowboys is such a perfect representation of a divisional rivalry. But on Thanksgiving, I want to spend time with my nieces and nephews. Last Thanksgiving, I was building with Connect toys or something, hanging out with family, not fully focused. I like the later game, the last one, because it's at night, everyone else has left, and I can just sit and watch. But those first two games? The first one I'm ways traveling, and the second one I'm literally in the middle of seeing my family. So personally, I'm a little disappointed by that scheduling. That's just me. I actually appreciated the year when it was backup quarterback versus backup quarterback, because I could half watch it, and it was still kind of funny and entertaining. And then we saw Dolly Parton, who is like 1,000,000 years old, singing and dancing. I'm all for that kind of thing. But yes, I am curious to see the ratings because this is obviously a big, important game. I think the numbers will be through the roof. Just to give you some context, the Chiefs were number 1 this past season, 2025, with, I believe, 15 of the top 100 broadcasts. The Eagles were second with 14 of the top 100, and the Cowboys were third with 13 of the top 100. So there you go. The Eagles and the Chiefs had the most watched non-holiday Sunday game of all time. They also had the most watched Super Bowl of all time. Even last year, the Eagles versus the 49ers in the wild card round, this was in 2025, that wild card game was one of the most watched playoff games. And that was just a wild card round between the 49ers. Meanwhile, the 49ers versus the Seahawks had 15 million fewer viewers. 15 million fewer. In fact, I'm pretty sure the NFC Championship game between the Rams and the Seahawks had roughly the same or slightly fewer viewers than that 49ers-Eagles wild card round. That is the power of popularity. When you start swinging by 10 million or even 5 million, that's massive. That has enormous financial repercussions. The Bills-Chiefs AFC Championship game in 2024 drew about 57 million viewers. That was literally 10 to 12 million more than the conference championship games this past year. That is huge. That is massive. So yes, I'm surprised the Eagles and Cowboys hadn't been scheduled for Thanksgiving sooner. My suspicion was always that those games do so well on their own that you don't need the Thanksgiving boost. But I think maybe the league saw the synergy with the Chiefs and the Cowboys, where they realized, we really get a double or triple bounce here. Sometimes when you have that level of popularity, you want to spread it out more evenly. But in recent years, they might have realized that actually, if we put Cowboys-Eagles on a Sunday night or a random night, it will get plenty of views regardless. But the potential on Thanksgiving is extra, extra, extra. So I'm really fascinated. That's what we saw with the Chiefs and the Cowboys. I believe that was the most watched Thanksgiving game of all time, if memory serves. And it makes sense, right? Two massive markets, Thanksgiving, and it just clicks. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles and Cowboys break that record, as long as both teams are competing, both are healthy, and both are truly in contention. Unfortunately, I've had to think about all of this more deeply and explore it further simply because of making videos. I see it firsthand. I make a video about the Miami Dolphins, and nobody watches. I make the 100th video about Micah Parsons and the Cowboys, or about Jalen Hurts, and people say, "You make so many Jalen Hurts videos." And yes, I do. I make a lot of Cowboys videos, a lot of Eagles videos, a lot of Bills, Ravens, Chiefs. I make videos about the teams that most people want to discuss and watch. And then I actively try my best to make content about the teams that not many people want to watch. When was the last time Colin did a deep dive on the Carolina Panthers or the Jacksonville Jaguars? I made a whole bunch of videos over the weekend about the Jags, the Panthers, the Falcons, and so on. I'm trying my best. But it's work. It's actually a liability because if you make a video that not many people watch, YouTube's algorithm says, people don't like what you're doing, so we're not going to promote it. It actually hurts you. And here I am, actively trying to break that cycle. I'm trying not to be beholden to the view gods, so to speak. But at the same time, you can't reject reality. I know that if I talk about Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears, there's a ton of energy there. If I ask, what should the Dolphins do with Tua Tagovailoa, nobody cares. When Tua got that concussion in the scary moment against the Bills, I made a video. I was uncomfortable about it, but I wanted to discuss the more human, life aspect side. Nobody watched it. Nobody cared. That was such a significant moment, and it just came and went. But if I make a video about Dak Prescott, can Dak Prescott beat the Commanders on Sunday? Way more people care about that. A random regular season game, one Dak Prescott performance against the Arizona Cardinals. Who actually really cares about that? And yet more people care about that than about one of the scariest moments you can see on a football field. That's the power of markets. That's the power of popularity. It's crazy, but it is what it is. Colin has always talked about this unapologetically. That was one of the first takes I remember from him, and it's why I started to like him. He literally said that people come up to him all the time and ask, "Why do you talk about Dallas so much? Why do you talk about the NFL so much? Why don't you talk hockey? Why don't you talk about this or that?" And his answer was, because that's what's popular. He said 80% of his show is the NFL, and a lot of that involves the Dallas Cowboys because of their popularity. He just says it without apology, "I want to talk about what's popular." And it makes perfect sense. So based on some of the videos I've made recently, I've seen people push back on that and get sensitive. And it's like, listen, if you're a smaller market, that doesn't mean you're bad, or inferior, or that your fans aren't passionate, or that you don't care, or that you don't have a great, fun environment. Oklahoma City is a wildly small market, especially compared to Los Angeles. But watching games in OKC is infinitely more exciting than watching games in LA. From a TV perspective, the crowd intensity there is absolutely rocking. So again, this has nothing to do with the inherent value of the fans. It's simply a sheer numbers game. But I do find it amusing, because I recently made a Dallas Cowboys video, and random Cowboys fans said, "The Eagles are nothing compared to the Cowboys." And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? The Eagles have only been relevant for the last few years. Bro, do you have any idea? That's why even Tom Brady made fun of Cowboys fans, and they responded, "Oh, that's just because it gets clicks and views." On Netflix. What? It's people's inability to just accept that other teams are popular, other quarterbacks are popular, other people are successful. I don't understand it. I really don't. It's a weird thing that people get sensitive about, and I don't necessarily know why. But the big teams are popular. A Dallas Cowboys versus Philadelphia Eagles game is more watched than a Tennessee Titans versus Jacksonville Jaguars game. That's just a fact. It's indisputable. And look no further than this, I'm telling you right now, the Seattle Seahawks are not opening the season against the Arizona Cardinals. That's just not happening because it doesn't move the needle enough. Yet, the Eagles won the Super Bowl, and they opened against the Dallas Cowboys, a team nobody was confident in. No Micah Parsons, the defense was a mess, they hired a new coach that people universally questioned, and the Cowboys hadn't even made the playoffs the year before. They didn't even make the playoffs this year. And still, the league said, Eagles versus Cowboys, opening day, first game of the season. Let's go. Let's rock and roll. And it was great. The ratings were through the roof because you're talking about two wildly popular teams going head-to-head. That's the power of Dallas. That's the power of Philadelphia. You just know it works. Not every team has that power. Not every team has that ability. That's why Seattle will likely be paired with a Chicago or someone similar, because you really need that synergy. Go search other YouTube pages, First Things First, The Herd, ESPN, any of them. Search how much Seattle Seahawks content has been produced since the Super Bowl. Almost none. Then go back in time and search when the Chiefs won, when the Eagles won. Every single day, 5 times a day. I'm telling you right now, I've seen the star in Dak Prescott's face way more since February than I have of Sam Darnold and the Seahawks. There have been endless Jalen Hurts stories. I'm about to make another Jalen Hurts Eagles video because Troy Aikman was just on Get Up, and I saw a 5-second clip and immediately thought, I'm going to turn that into a video. That's the power of popularity. That's the power of these markets. And that's what makes the Eagles and the Cowboys such valuable franchises. It's not dependent on any one individual. It's the power of their brand and their fan base in general. Again, Dak Prescott could leave, and the Cowboys would still be wildly popular. Jalen Hurts could leave, and the Eagles would still be wildly popular. These teams can struggle for a bit, miss the playoffs a couple of years, as the Cowboys have done. It doesn't matter. They'll still get enough baseline views. And as soon as they become competent again, they springboard right back to the top. The Eagles had the top 3 most sold merchandise items, Saquon Barkley, Patrick Mahomes, then Jalen Hurts, 1, 2, and 3. That's the power right there. So yeah, pretty interesting. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you all think about the popularity and its impact on how the NFL does scheduling, and the need and want to have these massive franchises also be competitive? Because it just helps the growth. It helps everything. If Patrick Mahomes were on the Dallas Cowboys or the Philadelphia Eagles, it would be game over in terms of views and popularity. It's wild when you think about it. But let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment, whether you agree with me or disagree. Let's get into some discussions. Let's get into some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you be part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something we're real. Why excited to be part of? I think we're well on our way. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, it really does help with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.